Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Rausen Pereira, indicating that further simplification of the goods and services tax is on the anvil. Prime Minister Narendra Modi said his government wants to ensure that 99% things attract sub-18% GST slab. Before implementation of the GST, registered enterprises only numbered 65 lakh, which has now risen by another 55 lakh. The Prime Minister said addressing a media summit in Mumbai. Prime Minister Modi indicated that the 28% slab of GST would only be restricted to a few select items such as luxury goods. The Prime Minister said that the effort will be to ensure that 99% of all items, including almost all items used by the common man, would be kept at a GST slab of 18% or less. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyse the implications of further simplifying the GST slabs. Joining me on the program today are Subhomoy Bhattacharjee, Consulting Editor of the Business Standard, S.K. Jindal, Chairman, Investment and Capital Markets, ASSOCHAM, R. Gopalan, former Secretary, Financial Services, Ministry of Finance, and Ajay Dua, former Secretary, Ministry of Commerce and Industry. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Mr. Dua, let me begin the program with you. Is this one step closer in simplifying the entire GST regime?
I'm not sure. It certainly reduces the number of items, which is today about 3% of the total 1,300 odd items, because there are 39 still left here. It reduces the number of items in that list, but about the rest, that we continue to have 6 slabs, starting from 0% to 28%. There is no word about it. And also there is no message of any kind from whether yesterday's announcement or any of the members of the GST that the number of the rates, the slabs are going to be reduced from 6 to 2 or 3. So to that extent, I would say all that's been indicated yesterday, and I would say that's been probably indicated on behalf of what the central government would wish, because ultimately the decision making is with the GST, which is a constitutional body. What they do, we don't know. And I would just flag one issue, that after this current round of state elections, the BJP ruled states and the BJP supported allies, or BJP's allies ruled states, plus the central government, do not make for the requisite 75% voting in the GST, which is required to make any changes or take any calls which are to be taken by the GST Council.
Right.
Hitherto, with 20 states, the things were different. The BJP and its allies were beyond the threshold limit of 75% at 77, but 3 states gone, which means 6.45, or say roughly 6.5% of the voting rights, brings them to about 71%. So they do certainly need the support of the non-BJP ruled states to be able to push through any change which they want. And ultimately the change expressed yesterday has to be taken on it by this constitutional body.
Absolutely. All right. Mr. Jindal, how will this impact the industry and the common man, if at all we see 99% of the goods or 99% of the commodities being brought under the 18% slab or below?
Positively. Whenever rationalization and simplifications are done, results are positive, efficiency increase, mood improves, and the results are always positive. So I think it's a very welcome step, and I see that it will benefit all of us.
All right. It's going to benefit all of us. It's a good thing. Rationalization is good, is what Mr. Jindal is suggesting. Mr. Gopalan, will the rationalization of the slabs have an impact on the government's finances?
Immediately, it will have some impact on the government finances. Already, there is a shortfall this year on what the collection is likely to be. We are looking at a drop of about 75,000 to 1 lakh crores as a shortfall for this year. On an immediate basis, there will be an impact. Well, over a period of time, everything will, kind of get evened out, as we go along. and without making a computation as to what would be the drop in revenue and looking into the present revenue structure or the present receipts of tax and non-tax total number, I don't think the government would have taken a decision of this nature. Probably they think that this year maybe there will be a shortfall in GST and somewhere else you can make it up. So that should be the logic under which this should have been done. But on an immediate basis, yes, there will be some shortfall as we go along.
All right. Subhomoy Bhattacharjee, as far as the GST Council meet is concerned, 31st one scheduled to take place on the 22nd of December, in just a few days from now. What can we expect from that particular meet? As Mr. Dua pointed out in his opening submission itself, the equations might have changed a little bit.
Yes, so far the GST Council has taken all decision on consensus. They have not had to use the voting thing. So if the voting at all does happen, that would itself be a big change, which we'll have to see going ahead whether it really is something to be scared of, because the voting, one of the reasons why the voting was sort of being avoided was, of course, that BJP had strong majority. Also that it was considered that in the initial stages, when the BJP, when the GST was taking the basic decisions, a fractured decision making would actually create more problems for rollout of the GST. So that itself is something to watch out for, whether there is going to be voting. Even if on a very slightest issue, if there is voting, then that itself is a big change on the GST Council, the way it operates, and that would be setting a precedent. That's one thing. The second part is that, as Mr. Dua said and Mr. Gopalan also said that, there is going to be a revenue issue, those numbers will be changing. But the interesting thing is that the slabs don't change. When the slabs don't change, that means that the government is keeping the slabs, even if they're empty shells, effectively, like the 28% becomes almost like an empty shell, just available so that if there's a necessity, it can be populated with whatever is necessary later on. And it may be necessary for them to do it because if you look at what is now starting among the states is this series of loan waivers and other things. And I suspect that going into the 2019 elections, the most states would be like really, opening up the tap to keep the population happy. There are already lots of combinations coming up on that line. Now, if that happens, then any giveaway on the tax front, and this is going to be difficult because the states would say that if I give up on GST, I need to be compensated. And my compensation therefore needs to be higher. So that creates an unequal pressure on the center. So how far the center can actually take, because these 20%, these items are actually high yielding ones. And if these items go away to 18, there's a considerable loss of revenue that would come, not in the next 4 months, but over a year. So
like Mr. Dua was pointing out, there are 39 items. Now, if it has to be 99%, about 25 of those items have to be brought down.
Like items like cement, for instance. Now, that's a very high value range. Now, those sort of stuff, if they go out, they create a considerable amount of distress for the center. To be able to compensate also for the states, because the states also now, every state is now looking at large SOPs. Gujarat yesterday, following up on the loan waiver, has already announced a 625 crore SOP for electricity. There will be other states. UP has already announced another loan waiver. And so this game is going to be ratcheted up. In that sort of a environment, saying that we reduce the GST collection, already running at an average of 97,000 crore compared to a projected 1 lakh, which means the deficit is coming to, for the next 4 months, the GST should run at something like 130 to 140 to be able to make up for the shortfall. Now, that's a huge gap that's already opened up. So there are a lot of ifs which we are looking at suddenly.
All right. Yes, Mr. Gopalan.
The one issue about cement, they have covered, both of them have covered a lot of other issues. I want to focus only on cement. Cement, about 25,000 crores is the amount which you get on cement. Now, okay, on a rationalization basis, when tax on tax is being avoided, probably that will not be that much of a loss. The problem there will be that the cement is always in this country a cartelized kind of a business. So, when they cartelize, it is possible that they may make so many changes in the way in which the billings are done, so as to, not to pay more GST, which they should normally do. So that kind of an practice, if it is to be resorted to, we need to be very watchful and see how that can be contained.
All right. You know, Mr. Dua, like the other panelists have pointed out as well, the purses are going to be opened now leading up to the elections, and SOPs are going to be doled out. So, I mean, what's going to happen to the economy?
I think in the short run, the economy, every time, I don't think this is anything new. Just before the national elections, every government has opened up its wallets, so to loosen its purses. This is not going to be any different, except that this time the expectations seem to be much more than before, and the actions of the two Congress chief ministers, the central provinces, one, the Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh, by their giving away the loans, fairly large amounts, loans over 40,000 crores, adding up to the two. And thereafter, yesterday, the Congress presidents projecting it as saying it is our demand, and the Prime Minister, you will have to yield to us, otherwise we are going to be on protest, is making it far more, I would say, competitive populism than one could have expected. And to that extent, I think the options before the Prime Minister, he's going to be in a dilemma, Finance Minister and the others, how to handle it. Here are the economists, the bankers saying that these things are no good for our banking system, already crushed under the weight of other NPAs and others. And at the same time, the agricultural economists saying this might be all right as a one-time thing, but certainly not, it's not addressing the structural problems of agriculture. So something else needed to be done, but I think that there are Hobson choices now before the people in government, and they may have to continue this process all for political ends, of populist, call them popular support seeking. And with the elections results which they threw up, I think the challenge before the ruling party is now a real one.
All right.
So it would have to get in. The economy is going to be paying a price for it. I'm very clear about it, particularly in terms of capital formation. We're not going to see much of capital formation from the government sourced one in the 4 months left of the year, or 6 months to the elections which are left. At the same time, I do see that problems arising in terms of revenue of the government itself. There could be revenue is not necessarily taxes, levies, other charges and other, both provincial as well as here. All of them are going to be going easy on it. So fiscal deficit would continue to remain a challenge, or would become a greater challenge than what it was, 3.3.
So are you suggesting that revenue targets will not be met?
Looks like.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Jindal, let's come back on track now and talk about GST. As far as GST is concerned, you know, what more needs to be done, do you think, so as to ensure that we have a proper, robust system in place, something that is foolproof?
You see, still after 1 year and a half has passed, there are still flaws in this. Exporters, they are suffering a lot from GST because they are not able to get their refund in time. And there is a lot of hue and cry on that front. That needs to be addressed very appropriately, because this is causing our exports are going down because of that. Second thing, these kind of rationalizations in rates and simplifications, they will have to be continued. This is a dynamic process. As and when we see these coming from the trade, we should be addressing them. So this process will continue, and then you see efficiency going up. Refund procedures are very, very complicated. Lot of things are stuck up in refunds, and they need not be so complicated the way they are being made or they are being handled now. So these things needs to be addressed. All difficulties need to be addressed. Otherwise, it's a robust system. Everybody likes it. Everybody appreciates. Nobody says it should not be there or is something wrong. But they want some relief from these kind of things which are causing them harassment.
All right. You know, on that very point, yes, Subhomoy.
No, I would like to ask Mr. Jindal, I was thinking, there's a debate that the Congress president has raised about whether GST should stay. if it becomes an election issue, which way do you think industry would be pitching? Would they want GST to stay or
GST to
roll
stay.
back?
GST, loud and clear, GST to stay. Okay, now my question.
I think, if I might just butt in,
Yeah.
what the Congress chief ministers yesterday, two of them have spoken. They are talking of GST 2, that it's the current structure, current one is badly structured, but badly designed. And when we come into power, GST stays. They are not talking about it going, but you will have a GST version 2.
I think we should leave that up to the politicians to decide and fight it out and battle
their
it out.
political
Absolutely.
compulsion
Yes,
that they want
absolutely.
to say no to it.
Absolutely, absolutely. We leave the politicians to do their work. But coming back on track now, Subhomoy Bhattacharjee, Mr. Jindal was pointing out about how the process itself is maybe a tad bit cumbersome. What has been done really to try and ease some of these problems, and what more could be done?
Well, one of the things that the government has actually given relief on is filing of the GST at 3. That itself was considered for quite a few of the guys who are not the big ones. That is a big difficult in terms of paperwork. So that has been left in abeyance. Also, this matching system, where you match invoices, which is actually the cornerstone of GST, that has been actually kept in abeyance for last 1 year. One of the big reasons why I think GST numbers have not been robust more than what they have been. They've been more than last year, but definitely less, not as was expected, is basically because there isn't the scare that if I file my return and the returns don't really tally, I'm not really going to be hauled up. So, and we'll have to see that what happens after elections and whether any government actually takes this up. Because this was one of the key things in GST, that GST will ensure that one person's return is squared off against the other person. So that I think is something that I don't see too much of comments from the industry about bringing that in. I hear a lot of word about refund, which I take it on board, and Mr. Jindal is right to say that there is a problem there and all those things. But this is something which has really not been taken on board because GST was supposed to be an integrated system. But of course, there is a room for improvement, as the Nandan Nilekani committee, which was working on it, was trying to ensure that there's only one comprehensive return, and that basically becomes totally online, far better than what GSTN has been able to do so far.
But compliance has increased.
Compliance has increased. Compliance, despite everything, has increased, and that itself shows that GST per se has the ability to actually drastically shake up the tax structure.
Right.
The fact that income tax has also improved, compliance has also is a reflection of the fact that the numbers are, even at the current state, they show up gaps which have been cottoned on by the income tax assessors, and that's why you find the income tax has for the first time crossed the threshold, which it's now 60 million families. That's actually payers in India. India has got 250 million families. Out of that, 125 if we leave out as below the poverty line, 60 million is actually quite a lot. So we have actually come up quite a considerable distance, and that's been in a very short time. And this has been post GST. So yes, there has been substantial change thanks to the GST.
Right. Yes, Mr. Gopal.
There are still few small difficulties. One is the e-way bill system, which people have been talking of, is not yet fully made operational at the operational level. Interstate is something is going on, but intrastate there are some issues, there are difficulties. Certain states have not been able to implement that fully. So that's one area where people need to focus on. On matching invoices, which he mentioned, it should take place and it will take place over a period of time. The question is that earlier we started with matching on an online basis, so that whatever is found out can always be looked at, and then that in a country of this size and the magnitude of transactions which are taking place, and with the connectivity and those kind of issues, on an online matching may become extremely difficult. So a matching over a period of time will be good, and it should take place, and once that is done, probably I have a feeling that these kind of issues will certainly go away. There are on the some IGST issues, there are some sharing, there are some refund, some issues are still there. That has not been fully tightened. So once that is done, probably all these things will but this is a process.
It is a
of
process.
This magnitude, the
learn
transactions,
as you go process as well.
this is something gargantuan, and it has to go only at this speed only. I don't think it can do wonders beyond this, and I think they are on track.
All right. Closing comments now from all my guests, starting first with you, Mr. Dua. Another aspect of this whole GST debate is that 50% of the GDP is left out of the ambit of the GST. So, you know, what's the story there? Is it going to happen anytime soon?
I think there is no reason why we should not have right from the beginning, other than the demand of the state saying because they were getting a lot of money out of petroleum products, the ATF, aviation fuel, they're getting a lot of money out of power, electricity which has been left out, etc. Luckily, alcohol is covered already, but sin good 28%, let it remain there, I'm not talking about that. But the fact of the matter is there is certainly need to bring every item under it, under the GST. Sooner we do it, the more possibility would there be of rationalizing and bringing down the rates. If you would recall, Frank, the Vijay Kelkar committee, which had looked at the estimates, which had done the designing, and thereafter Arvind Subramaniam, as the CA, was asked to look at, suggest a rate. It was a 16% rate, or 15 to 16%, which was adequate. But now we still have, if you look at the number of items above, we have 605 items at 18% and 39 items at 28%, which means roughly 50% of the items continue to be above that requirement of if we bring in these mass products, mass consumed products and volumes are large, I'm sure it would be possible to reduce the rates on other slabs.
All right. Mr. Jindal, what's the best way forward as far as the GST is concerned?
To continue with this, nobody is looking for the old system again, but to solve the problems quickly, especially for this exporter front and others also, so that more and more people they get a fair treatment here.
All right. All right. Subhomoy Bhattacharjee, you know, as far as the 28% slab is concerned, what's likely to remain there?
Basically the name. I mean, effectively it now becomes 5, 12 and 18. That's so it's almost by working procedure, it almost becomes like a three stage GST, except the fear always remains that, you know, something can be bumped up to 28. That's something that will stay, I suppose, for the time being, and I suppose we'll have to live with that.
All right. And closing comment from you, Mr. Gopalan?
Well, this is as I mentioned, is a very enormous, big task. We are going through this, and most importantly, see, all decisions have been taken on a consensus basis. Every state has pitched in, and there have been some states which had some problems, and those, even though there are one single state which had a problem on one particular issue, the council has sat together, discussed this, and then taken a consensus view, and ultimately it must have helped that particular state, but they had a very strong reason as to why this has got to be done. So my view is that this can be done only on a consensus basis, and the political system in this country have really understood that that's a way to go forward, and they have done this. I am sure whatever be the voting and non-voting, those kind of things which are coming up, I don't think in future that will be resorted to. It will always be on a consensus basis, and I have a feeling that that's the way it will go forward.
All right.
And I think that this is a good beginning, and it should see to its logical end.
All right. I've got some more time left on the program, about a minute left. So, Ms. Dua, I'm going to let you have the last word on the program.
Just one bit. I think the capacity of the network still warrants augmentation. For instance, I file my GST returns on 20th. From tonight to till tomorrow, first I'll be busy not getting a slot to pay, and then my CA who will be filing the return would also tell me, sir, why did you send it on the last day? I'm just not able to get. So that the network would constantly need to be updated and made more robust.
Yeah, that's one thing which I also forgot to mention. Apart from the points which he has mentioned, see, the kind of capacity, the server capacity which needs to be there, the connectivity to get this done on an online ongoing basis, these are problems which needed to be kind of tackled. Probably at the beginning, this kind of people, bunging in on the last day, every one of them, that was not thought of. But Indians are Indians. Yes. That's the way they, do things. And therefore, That should have been taken care of when the designing stage was there. But anyway, now that that is past, now I have a feeling that they should even beef up further to ensure that the system operates on a seamless basis without anybody complaining that something has happened, something is wrong, and need to postponement of filing of the returns and those kind of things need not have to take place. I think that's an area which government is focusing on.
All right. On that note, then, we'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's it from me. See you again next time.